Okay, let's see here. So we've got a goal, and we're going to do a background. So welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel and to our weekend live stream Q&A, where I'm going to answer all of your questions related to history and social studies for the next hour or so. We usually do this Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern, but a bunch of different factors and family emergencies have kept me back. But I am back now with you, and we'll do this background. So are the Romanovs, Nicholas, Alexandra, their daughters, and their son, and we are going to be answering all questions about history and social studies. Russian history would be appreciated. That's my favorite subject, our favorite part of history, or my most expertise about history. I love all parts of history. And I'm doing well. My family's okay. But I've been very tired, so I took a nice long nap earlier this afternoon, and now I'm feeling up and ready to go. And so for the next hour or so, I'll be answering all of your questions about history, social studies, and the like. And we actually did something new. I guess this is a new thing. We set a goal, and the goal is if we could get 10, I think it's bonus super chats, I will do 3 long-form videos this coming week instead of just 2. We'll do one Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I've got a long-form video coming out tonight to make up for the one I missed on Friday, and I woke up from my nap feeling energized and ready to talk about history in a friendly, neighborly manner, because that's what we do here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. So thank you all for joining us. Hopefully everyone's having a really good weekend and has enjoyed themselves and is ready for a nice week coming up. We will be back to our normal broadcasting, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Q&A, Ask Me Anything Friday and Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern, and then Sunday at 4. Next week we will do a live stream lecture. That is what we typically do at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. We'll probably make up for it by doing something for Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, depending on how you want to see it. So maybe we'll do another Q&A. Maybe we'll do a third. Maybe we'll do an extra live stream lecture. We'll see what's going on next weekend. So we've got a lot of fun stuff to make up. So I'm doing okay. Thank you for everyone who asked. But if you have a question about history or social studies, drop it in the chat, and I'll be happy to talk with you. We're going to go for another hour or so dealing with different historical topics of your choice. So if you like history and social studies, if that's something that you're interested in, consider liking and subscribing and becoming a friendly neighborhood historian. It's easy as that. There's also memberships for early access for videos, extra videos, extra short videos, and hopefully extra live streams and stuff like that. So welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel, to our weekend Q&A. Usually we go every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern, but certain circumstances has forced me to do only one today. So drop a historical topic in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer it, or a question, and like and subscribe as always. So what were speculative bubbles, and how did they pop up before the great economic downturns like the Great Depression or the Great Recession? The Great Depression was not the first major economic downturn in the United States or the world. There were economic panics in many different times, such as the 1893 panic and the 1873 panic. Most of them caused by issues surrounding the currency. There was the whole greenbacks issue, the wanting the government to go off the gold standard and rely on the silver standard in the 1880s and 1890s so that there would be more money available to the American public, was really popular with the common man. There was an entire political party, the Populist Party, which pushed the greenbacks idea really heavily in the late 1800s. The panic of the 1870s had been caused by an economic recession due to reduced production after the Civil War. The first major economic panic in American history came in 1837, which made it worse in 1838 or 1839 with a cotton drought, which obviously was huge a huge part of the American economy, particularly in the South. So there have been economic issues, but have been related to products and services and the monetary supply before, and was obviously more related to the stock market, and its collapse is a major indicator of economic health with the Great Depression of 1929. So by what year did colonial white wigs fall out of fashion? Probably the 1810s, 1820s. Industrial Revolution kind of put it into that fashion trend. Knee breeches went out of style, and long trousers came into fashion. So fashion changed early in the 19th century. Why was the UK such a massive supporter of free trade, to the point when even when we were tariffed, we didn't do it back until the idea of impartial preference finally came out? Probably similar to America, creating goodwill and believing kind of a Adam Smith very strong capitalist notion that and thank you, Tanya, for that gift, really appreciate it. Basically believing that in a very strong free market approach, that other countries benefited most and your economy benefited most when you had free trade and no sort of preconditions or tariffs. It's a very strong fundamental foundation of capitalism, which had obviously helped Britain build its industrial revolution in the 19th century. And this probably changed after this last World War, which I call World War III. Many call World War II, only because of the pressure from the United States to decolonize, and the hopes for post-colonial bonuses probably was a huge driver for that. Were there ancient economic depressions? I imagine when plagues hit and shut things down like the Silk Road or war in areas that interconnected state depended on. Yep, famine, plagues, all sorts of things could cause economic depressions. Obviously, Rome had many financial crises, especially during the 3rd century, because of the devaluing of the currency. Jeans were, there have been different types of pants made at different times for workers in difficult conditions, but the most famous story is obviously Levi Strauss, a German immigrant to the United States who used studded denim as a very durable form of pants that became extremely popular during the California gold rush in the 1840s and 1850s. Nas or Jay-Z? Probably Jay-Z. And yes, please follow us on all those social media handles. I haven't been posting on them a lot recently, but I'm going to catch up this week. No, I do not eat corn the long way. I don't know why you have to scream all of your answers, Kevin. But if you enjoyed what I'm talking about, please like or subscribe. Chat said your wig is falling off. Oh, really? Is it? I didn't know. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie Kirk. Yikes. I probably need to change your screen name because that's pretty insensitive. But anyways, yeah, other questions, topics about history or social studies, please drop them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer. We do this every Friday and Saturday usually, and then Sundays are a live stream lecture, but I have been so zonked and busy this past week. Thank you for all your prayers and support and thoughts and all of that great stuff. I'm doing better. I rested a lot earlier today, so yeah, and then Sundays is our live stream lecture. But yes, hello Charlie, hello Daniel. Did the prayers help? Charlie, I don't share about my personal background, and you're married, so yes. Koan, hello. Did the prayers help? I mean, I'm not going to talk about religion. I can talk about the history of prayers if you want. Karl Marx did not call the 7 Years' War World War, but referred to it as a world war. Well, Karl Marx and I agree about at least that. So yeah, there was the First World War, I believe, is the 7 Years' War. Hars, if you could put the link to that video, it's probably one of my most controversial takes and probably my most famous video, where I talk about how the 7 Years' War is indeed the First World War, and then that would make the Great War World War II, and the Second World War, the Nazis and the Japanese, World War III. Talk about Rasputin. Rasputin was we don't know exactly if Rasputin had healing powers, what he actually did to help the Tsarevich Alexei, the son of this man, Nicholas II, and I think that's him as a baby there. I'm pretty sure this photo is probably taken 1904, 1905. But Alexei had hemophilia because of the inbreeding of the royal families, who were all descended from Queen Victoria and extremely related. Lots of German princes and princesses through the centuries intermarrying, and that eventually, of course, got Alexei, who had hemophilia. He wasn't the first one, but supposedly Rasputin had the ability to heal them. This made him indispensable to the Tsarina Alexandra, and Nicholas was not strong enough or smart enough to stop this or change the fact that it was patrilineal succession, meaning that the next Tsar had to be male. He could have easily changed and allowed one of his daughters to become the Tsarina after his death, but this obviously hurt the credibility of the Russian monarchy because Rasputin was an unwashed, dirty, drunken peasant who was known for all sorts of cavorting and wild behavior throughout Moscow and St. Petersburg, which really hurt the prestige and popularity of the Russian royal family, right when the economy was weak, right when they were going to a world war, and right when there had been a revolution in 1905. So Rasputin did no favors to the royal Romanov imperial family, and ironically helped lead to the collapse of the family, their imprisonment by the Bolsheviks, and the eventual execution of not just Nicholas, but his whole family, including that same Tsarevich that he had helped to heal, Alexei. So yeah. Honey, hello. Do you know about the history of Constantine, like what he changed in the churches? Constantine allowed the Christian church by legalizing it to become a state bureaucratic entity and the predominant social and religious force in the empire. It would be Theodosius I in 380 who made it the official religion of the empire and banned all the others. We do know he didn't have healing powers, actually. At the very least, he had a sway of influence on the Romanovs. What period in history do you find the most interesting, and why? I love all the different periods of history, but each of them is pretty interesting. I love which part would I live in? I'd probably live in late 19th century Europe because there's so many changes and innovations going on, Fable, that it's quite fascinating. But usually when I'm talking about Russian history, I'm talking about the last couple of centuries, and I find that to be fascinating. Check out my history of Russia videos. Check out my long-form video on the Russian Tsars, as well as my tier ranking system of the Russian Tsars. Isn't the big thing calling it World War Zero? Yeah, but I don't even like that. Are we having a world war going on right now? No. It's not interconnected enough to be a world war. They made the storybook songs and movies about him. The guy is an icon. I mean, the song just slaps. It's one of the best songs ever, the Rasputin dance song. What is the history of modern Christmas with Santa and decorating trees? I made an entire video about this, but Thomas Nast, basically a German immigrant promoting German customs, gave us the idea of a man in the red suit carrying a bag of toys. It's a derivative of St. Nicholas of Myra from the 4th century. And then, of course, Coca-Cola gave us the modern incantation of Santa in his white trimmed red suit with drinking a Coke can and carrying the red bag over his shoulder. That's kind of where it comes, but it's actually a statement of American immigrants bringing their culture to the United States. It's an example of a melting pot. It's an extremely fascinating story. And I have it in my video about the real truth of Christmas. I have videos on almost every major holiday, including Samhain, aka Halloween, which is coming up very, very soon. Let me see. That I fully agree to. We definitely had intense pull in that society. Some of these people are dark, evil people. We're talking about any type of history, Julene. So any type of history you'd like to talk about, drop it in the chat and I'll be happy to answer. I like Alexander II. Who doesn't? One of the greatest czars in Russian history, extremely underrated. If he had lived, probably would have created some sort of liberal constitution for Russia that probably would have been able, or parliamentary rule that would have been able to stabilize the monarchy and get representation for all the people that were suffering. What is generally the message in books that were banned? I'm reading Frankenstein and like how the social criticisms are still valid. There's a lot of social criticisms in books that are still banned. There's a lot of fears of many books that were banned in the 20th century were banned because of how they talked about authoritative government and warned about the possibility of that happening anywhere at any time. Gaihan, I so appreciate the donation. Super chats get more attention, more in-depth answers. Why was Ben Franklin's son a loyalist to the crown? He was a close associate. I think he was the governor of Pennsylvania. Many of Franklin's son's closest friends were royalists, and it was obviously he believed in the loyalist cause. He believed that the colonies were better because of the British Empire. He believed the British Empire had more sway, and like his father, he was a strong Anglophile. It was very difficult for Ben Franklin to believe in the causes of liberty, but his commitment to Enlightenment principles and philosophy kind of superseded his impressed attitude towards the British. Both of them were extraordinarily impressed by the width and breadth and civility of the British Empire in their eyes. So for Franklin to do it was a huge, huge concession. Russian Empire versus the Aztecs, I think the Russians win. The Russians have an underrated, throughout their imperial history, had an underrated army that was actually pretty terrifying to go up against. So yeah, let me see here. I would love to be born in 1782. Imagine that you would see in your life a French Revolution, Napoleonic War, most likely the revolutions of 1848, the Congress of Vienna. Yes, to be in Europe in the beginning of the 1800s is really a fascinating thing if you can live through the Napoleonic Wars. Because you would have been at the ripe age to go to fight for your country against Napoleon, and that's a death sentence. And if you're fighting with Napoleon, that could be a death sentence too. Do you read Nostradamus, the 16th century French astrologer, physician, and reputed seer? I've read some of his stuff, but I'm not obviously going to go off and say that Nostradamus is predicting the future. So yeah. Godzilla would melt King Kong. Not Mothra, though. From what I'm told, Constantine changed the Son of God name to Jesus from Yeshua, also painted the Trinity. I didn't change Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday around 321 AD to 325 AD, and for heard of any disease. Yes, I do, and there is basis, and this isn't a religious statement. This is a historical statement based on the earliest teachings of the Christian church. This is not something that Constantine came up with. Constantine, if he did any of these things, was simply aligning himself with already believed Christian practices at the time. The idea of the Trinity, the idea of Jesus being the Son of God, are all reputed and heavily testified to, not only in the New Testament, but in the writings of men called the Church Fathers, who were not in line with the Roman Empire, like the bishops and leaders during Constantine's period, but were actually being targeted by the Roman Empire for persecution. All of those ideas had already become quite popular by the end of the first century amongst the Christians. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that's not a religious statement that Christianity is true or anything. That's just what I see from a historical lens. This is the only quality content I've come across on the live here. I'm from America, historian from Boston. Well, Andrea, I really appreciate that. Thank you for joining us here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. And if you feel like Andrea, please like and subscribe. And for all the new members, because we got a lot of people here today, please consider liking and subscribing, but at least ask a question about history, and I'll answer it as soon as I can. Please do the vote for you to dress up as Woodrow Wilson for Halloween. We'll see. It's not a hard costume to do. You just need a suit and a jacket, and you need those homeroom glasses. Let's not forget that Alexander II was one of the biggest supporters of rolling back the Finnish constitution and making it an integral part of autocratic Russia. Yes, he was still a Russian imperialist while also wanting Russia to become more liberal. How much of Rome was Christian by Theodosius' time? A significant portion. The Christians basically outbirthed the Romans, and by the early 4th century, even if Constantine wasn't a Christian, you take one of the more cynical views of the approach, Constantine was at least politically expedient and smart and savvy enough to realize that Christianity was the largest growing entity in his realm, so the best thing he could possibly do is embrace this new faith. What is the best way to make the hamburger helper meal? Do whatever the pack tells you and then add salt. Ooh, and onions. How do I feel like I'm in Robert Heinlein's book, Stranger in a Strange Land? Because you are. I'm a solipsist for Robert Heinlein. Ben Franklin's son William was a spy for the British in the Revolutionary War. Yes. Why doesn't everybody ever ask what kind of books were burned in Germany? People can ask that and do ask that. I know where you're going with this. It's the whole, the Nazis were actually moral titans of virtue and were extremely based. That's ultra right-wing nonsense. Rooster Cog burned because the Nazis basically burned anything that challenged their ideological paradigms, including the Bible. They burned Freud because he was a Jew. They burned many different modern psychologies. They burned many of the philosophers, both ancient and modern, and they burned the Bible, along with books that... So the idea that the Nazis were just targeting homosexual, transgender studies, things like this, and other secular ideas is not true. They were also targeting organized religion. The Nazis were very much anarchic in the way they wanted to destroy and deconstructionist, and in the way they wanted to destroy almost all foundational parts of society and remake it in their own image. We all know from the cold and snowy winters had given them the advantages to win wars. It did, but they were good at maximizing on it. It wasn't like the Russians were bad at fighting. By what time did anti-British sentiment leave the American zeitgeist? It hasn't left the American zeitgeist. But yes. And thank you for the gift membership. I really appreciate that. And Muffle Moose is now a member. Thanks to you, Tiny. So he's going to get early access to some of our videos, extra long-form videos that will hopefully be coming out soon. This week was going to be the week I would be on it, and then I got totally delayed with my family emergencies, but we're doing better. See, where do you think the gaps in your knowledge are? What are you learning now? Right now I'm doing a Russian history series, and I know so much about Russian history. I've studied it for so long. I'm trying to see if there's anything new I can learn about that. Let me see. By what time let me see. I already answered that. But yes, please ask a question. I'll be happy to answer. And I promise I will get there as soon as I can. Dark Dragons, I appreciate you sending the gift memberships so that Ravoli can become a member of the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. How do you think our founding fathers would feel about the duopoly we have here? Washington hated it. Jefferson and Hamilton, not so much. They were the main progenitors of that. And John Adams was a Federalist. I think they realized it was a necessary evil, and I think the idea of a duopoly being a necessary evil is just baked into the American conscience against the will of George Washington. American history is just starting. I am Scottish. My family has been here since 1070. Clan MacFarlane. We were Celtic. That's fascinating. I love learning about the Scottish clans. Check out my video on Macbeth, British Defence Legion, British Defence League. You'll really like it. But the truth of the matter is, yes, the United States is relatively early. If you think of history as a clock where 6,000 years of recorded history is divided into 12 500-year hour segments, the United States has been around for a half hour compared to Scotland, just your family, who has been around for 2 hours, 1,000 years. So yeah, think of history as a clock. It was one of my professors taught me in college, and it's a very useful tool. Donald Trump has already alienated most Americans, and he's less than a year into his 4-year term. Do you anticipate Dems and Republican legislators getting together to have him removed from office? No. The Republicans are too much in the bag for him to do that. Were Nazis atheists? Some of them were. Some of them were Christians. Some of them were occultists. There's a long string of the occult. I think there really is a Nietzschean hedonistic agnosticism baked into a lot of Nazi ideology. What difference does it make which books they burned? It makes a lot of difference to gripers on the internet. What historic text would you like to read but don't have access to? Ancient Sanskrit writings would be nice. I should read. I'm thinking about how expanding my knowledge of Indian history, so there would be that. Um, early religious writings from the major religions that have been lost to time would be fascinating as well. This war was Russia can Ukraine rather end, and what would be the outcome? We'll see if they can end it. I don't know. We'll see about Gaza and what's going on there. Between Martin Luther and Constantine, many Bible books are actually missing. Even Matthew was missing many different ones in books of Quell as well as the Gospel of Thomas. Most of those books, so yes, that is true. There were Gospels written in the second and third centuries that were considered later by the church to be anathema and heretical. They were credited to the earlier apostles, although they were not written by the earlier apostles. We don't know if the books of the Gospels themselves were written by the people who claimed to write them. Matthew and John were two apostles who supposedly wrote the Gospels of Matthew and John, but we don't know if they actually wrote them. One thing that does separate it is you've got there is some credible evidence to believe that the earliest Christian writings are written in the first century, and it's kind of after that they kind of shut the door on further Christian writings. But yes, there is obviously a lot of speculation as to how much was taken away. Don't resort to hyperbole. They can be moral and immoral on different issues. Closing the sexual institute was not immoral. Okay, that's fair. Have you ever been to jail before, ever gotten a traffic ticket? Why do you want to know about that? Always love your loved always. Who do you think managed their time as the world superpower the best? Oh, I'd say the British had an ability to hang on to their empire pretty well. The Mongols were probably the worst at it, kind of breaking down after a while. But the Romans or the British probably get it. They're probably the two most renowned empires because they managed their time so well, and spread their culture, but also had a level of tolerance for the native cultures which they encountered. Um, it's partially true. Nazis did burn degenerate books, but that doesn't excuse the fact that they themselves had degenerate behavior and actions. Yeah, it was really a broad brushstroke to destroy whatever they believed was encroaching on German society, be it what they saw as communism, be it sexual deviancy, or be it traditional values that they thought were weakening the German people. The Nazis were a people of strength, and they believed whatever sissified or weakened German society needed to be destroyed. What's the difference between Masons and Illuminati, and what religion do they follow or have interviewed with organizations, and how does it go in these organizations? There are groups that are pretty para-religious in their own way. They kind of have their own secret cloister of religious beliefs and behaviors, and they're not necessarily following any sort of religion. And the Masons would be a more ancient one, the Illuminati would be one that's more contemporary. They're believed to be secret societies, but have secret initiative rights, very powerful people involved, and do some of the biggest behind-the-scenes power moves in the world. And it's good to see you, Scarface, as always. Welcome back to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. American history is quite fascinating. Um, um, Thank you, Fidel. I really appreciate you listening. Religion started when some losers that couldn't survive on their own, compete with others, invented a reason for why everybody else would have an obligation to look after them and care for their welfare. That's true. There's actually some truth to what you're saying, Greg. I know it's a very cynical approach, but the truth of the matter is religion is a way that the masses, the opiate of the masses, religion is a way that people in different cultures, in different societies, at different times in the world, find a unifying feature that can help them succeed and work together to achieve their ends, achieve their goals. So it's just integral to human experience, to human condition, and social studies is the study of how we are social creatures, of how how the human condition really works. And religion turns out to be one of the ways that human culture decides to normalize and familiarize itself. Uh, and to coalesce around a unifying theme, and religion is probably the strongest of the themes that it coalesces around to form a society. If I an American wanted to relocate to another country, which one would be the most receptive and the safest? Angloid countries tend to have the most in common with the United States: Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and Great Britain. France was never the world superpower, nor was Russia, and China was a superpower, but had limited global power. Yes, China is definitely a superpower, but in Asia, I would say they are the world superpower. If you compare them to any of the empire, if you compare them to any medieval society, they are the superpower around that in medieval times, probably until the 1400s. They are definitely more of a superpower than the Europeans are. I don't know if you would compare them necessarily to the British or the Romans, but the Han Empire was a respected and powerful empire at the same time as the Romans, so it's tricky. The Nazis were required to view Hitler as their savior. That's why they say Hail Hitler. Geez, I didn't know that. What was Black Monday in the 1973-1974 stock crash? It's just times when the stock market loses a lot of its value. This happened in the 70s. It happened in the 80s. It happens almost every decade. There's a day of really bad results for the stock market. Good and evil are subjective, so who am I to say what's right and wrong? But I sure know that what team I'm on. Israel is the pro-Western faction of the conflict. If you live in Western Civ, it's an easy one. Your opinion, Greg. You're entitled to it. Bolshevism, I don't know what you want me to say about that. That's the hardline Russian communists that eventually formed the Soviet Union. Are we close to using nuclear weapons? No. Not in my opinion. If you want me to go in depth on a political topic or a current geopolitical issue, consider a super chat, and then I'll go more into it. This is a history channel. People want to sometimes commandeer this and make it a political channel, but yeah. How do you equate ancient eunuch cults like the Magamara and Elagabal to the modern era enough in religious and secular contexts? I don't. That's a very niche way to look at it, Stinky, but you're talking about you're probably talking about monks, nuns, and other religious groups that tend to be celibate in order to focus 100% on their religion. That's I think that's, again, integral to religions, which are integral to cultures, that you have people who decide to give up procreation, give up their own earthly future in the sense of having a family to take care of them when they get old in order to serve their higher power for an eternal future. Seems to be part of that. Let me see. Thank you, Nazi, for joining us. It's good to see you. Russia was not the world superpower. It was pretty much a duopoly with the U.S. and the USSR. The Soviet Union the Soviet Union's a world power. And the Russians got pretty close to being a world power after defeating Napoleon under Catherine the Great, but the British would probably be a step ahead of them. Have you ever studied Vaslav Nijinsky or the Ballets Russes? It's not an inherently political subject, but when I studied the Russian Revolution, I found it fascinating, the art that came from that time. Yes, I've looked at a little bit of it. The way the Soviets changed Russian art is pretty formidable. That's true. China is an empire. France was also never on par with the United States. Okay. Was Columbus good, or was he an evil slave owner for real? I'm confused. Columbus, in his historical context, obviously did a lot of terrible things. Even 500 years ago, it'd be hard to say that those things were good. And enslaving your enemies and those you conquered and defeated was just a common feature of human history at that time. It doesn't make it okay, but it does give some context to it. He was confused about where he was going, remained confused even after he had been basically proven wrong, believing he had landed in India until his death. But the truth of the matter is, Columbus's adventurism, obviously, you can't have a Western world the way it has become without Columbus and the Spanish. It'd be very hard for us to think of the United States, Canada, and Latin America even without Columbus. Even the United States and Canada, despite the fact they were colonized later by the British, you can't think of them coming to be without some sort of Columbian influence. So it's really hard, because on one end, you don't like a lot of things Columbus does, and I get it. But on the other end, you don't have much of a Western society that you live in and use from that lens of moral superiority to condemn the actions of 500 years ago, which seemed morally inferior, without Columbus. So it's a strange, difficult paradox there. Let me see here. Which is pushing around 7,000 years. I don't know what you're saying, Agus. I think you're just going on about stuff. Don't you think it's ironic that the Jews promote the Holocaust as the worst atrocity in history, and now the Jews are inflicting the same atrocities on the Palestinian people? No, I don't find it ironic, because they're not equivalent. Next. What percentage do you think of historical Bibles and other types of teachings are really from the Word of God, or just human made up that up for control to try to explain things? There's ideologies in many ancient texts, religious texts too, that explain that God did this and this is why the world is that way. It's not just the Christian Bible that does this. Ancient people didn't understand the water cycle, so explaining rain and continental drift and erosion and things like that through a giant flood would make a lot of sense to them. The truth of the matter is, I'm not going to comment on how much of the Bible is actually historically accurate. I will say there are many historical accounts in the Bible that are meant to be read as histories of actually what happened, and a predominant amount of them are actually in the Old Testament, and then the Gospels and the Acts of the Apostles are supposed to be that. Now, are they? That's up for you to decide, but I'm saying the way they were intended to be written, based off of everything I know of the ancient histories of that time. It's almost impossible to run across an ancient history that would read like a modern history book. Fantastical events and interactions from gods of different societies were common in the histories of Thucydides and Herodotus, so it's acceptable and expected that it would be the same in the history of the church called the Acts of the Apostles, written by St. Luke. So there you go there. And those things were placed upon the German people by the Zionists. That's why Hitler wanted them out of power in German society. The Jews were not in power in German society. Zionism was not the major part of German politics or society in the 1920s or 30s. That's nonsense. What government or religion would you come up with? Benevolent dictatorships tend to be extraordinarily effective if you actually look at how benevolent they can be. That's why people like Tito was so popular in Yugoslavia, still is to this day, despite being pretty repressive at times. But there can be an effectiveness about that. But at the end of the day, probably the most, being a Westerner, I have a penchant for the democratic tradition, Republican tradition of representative government and things like that. Religion. I'm not going to say what religion I would come up with. I would tip my hand about what religion I am. I don't share my religious views. My moderators don't know my religious or political views. They speculate all the time, and they're usually wrong. And they've known me for a long time. But I'm not going to say what type of government. I have a very Western lens about it. That doesn't mean that democracy is the end-all, be-all. And religion, obviously, the West has been highly influenced by Christianity. However, you have to look at the entire historical narrative to realize there are many other religions that would probably get similar results to Christianity in some of their contexts, Judaism probably being the most famous of them. Why even not so social-oriented society were so religious? I think religion is just a natural way for people to try to explain the way the world is and try to create a common culture that they can share. My whole family were Masons. If you go to any cemetery, you will be hard-pressed to find a maker about the insignia. That's really cool, Jeff. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate that. I don't know what propaganda I'm pushing. Are most Indians ethnically British? There's a lot of British social and ethnic influence in India, but no. Most of them are not distinctly British. Who are the people in the picture behind you? This is the Russian royal family, Nicholas II, his wife Alexandra of Hesse, and their 4 girls and a boy, who obviously were killed in the Russian Revolution. What do you think about the boss and the Patriots? What do you mean, the boss and the Patriots? In the New Testament, I always had an issue with how the resurrection of Jesus is barely mentioned in Mark. Thoughts? Thanks, I'm a new subscriber. Yeah, the gospel, so from what I understand of how the religious writings are done, the Gospel of Mark is written before the other ones, and it's the one that basically just tells the story in a quick, succinct way, so it's easy for you to understand about who Jesus is. And there's a longer ending that's seen as a later addition that gets more into detail about what Jesus said, and there's a shorter ending that basically says, yeah, he rose from the dead. And it's probably because of a tradition of particular statements, King Dupy, that were added later on, where it's like, oh, actually Jesus said this, and oh, actually he said this to me. And so in the interactions of eyewitnesses or people who said they were eyewitnesses was probably a huge influence. So you got Gospels that come later, they're like, well, we need to flesh this out more. That's the more kind view of it. Another possible interpretation is that they really didn't know anything about the resurrection. We're just speculating and decided to build off of it afterwards. So do with that what you will. I'm not going to share one way or another what I view about this from a religious perspective. I give my responses based on what I understand of the history and the accounts that are written. It's about history, not you. Yes. This channel is about Emir. I really appreciate that, and the super chat. Anything helps the channel grow. This channel is about the history. That's either the King of England, Tsar of Russia. Already answered it. I'm going to catch up to the chat as soon as I possibly can. Which would you marry? Amelia Earhart, Elizabeth II. Probably Elizabeth II. I like a woman who's usually on the ground. What do you know about treasures hunting that the Japanese left in the Philippines? I'm out here in PH, and the locals still seek out treasures. Wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. It's similar to what the Nazis were trying to do, seeking for ancient religious artifacts in Africa. How do you feel about the idea that atheistic societies turn to the state in lieu of religion? I think religion in many forms is intrinsic to the sociology of human society. It could be. It's a cart and horse argument. Do people turn to the state in lieu of religion, or does the state become the religion? Which comes first? Is it that the state becomes the religion, or that the religion becomes the state? Was Volgan's actions justified? Don't know who that is. You're going to have to key me in. I don't know everything, Zidan. Ekaterina basically saved USA. You mean Catherine the Great? What about the battle in war with Spain and the Philippine Islands, Lapu-Lapu and Magellan? I read some stuff on that was interesting. Yeah, the Spanish kind of did this on on and off colonization of the Philippines until the 1560s, but it started with Magellan and his circumnavigation of the globe, where there was fighting and some of his crewmates were killed, and Magellan died in the Philippines, but some of his crew were able to complete the first circumnavigation of globe the following year. Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate you. You're so kind. Steelers are dog water. They're going to get destroyed by the Bills. The Steelers are doing very well, and that's all that I have to say about that. And every single AFC North Division rival lost today, so that's good news for me. And I'm also winning in fantasy, so there you go. The one facet of eunuch cult celibacy, another aspect, is custodians of the divine feminine, queens, goddesses, protection, no chance of illegitimate heirs. Interesting. Yeah, it's the idea that you serve usually a queen who has an unblemished line. It's almost tantamount to how bees do it, in my opinion. I've got the Romanovs in the background because I'm a Russian historian and I wanted a nice background, and so the Romanovs are watching you. How many nuclear? Be careful in how you behave and how you act in the chat. How many nuclear bombs would it take to destroy the world? 1 or 2 or more? A lot more. World's pretty extensive. Was Rasputin seen as a holy man? How was he able to get so close to the Russian royal family? Did his status change after Tsar Nicholas and his family were killed? He was at first seen that way, but obviously it became obvious over time that he wasn't. And the Bolsheviks saw him as kind of a relic of imperialist religion, and obviously many people just see him as the mad monk today. History of the Holocaust wasn't the worst. There was actually more people killed on the Russian Jewish guy. You get his name. Are you very familiar with this? Candace Owens did a video of it. Jeez. Is that the idea of is that Zhukov? I don't care what Candace Owens thinks, because she doesn't know anything about history. But more important than that, she's an interesting person to listen to if you want to delve into conspiracy theories. But basically, the Russians under Stalin killed far more people than the Nazis in a longer period of time. I hate this dismissive attitude this attitude that people have where you can't talk about other atrocities. I talk about them all the time. So do many other historians. You can't talk about Holodomor, the Armenian genocide, Rwanda, or what happened in Cambodia. And China. We talk about it all the time here on the channel. So rest assured, the Jews are not controlling me and telling me I can't talk about other genocides. That isn't happening. They're not turning up the heat in my area of the world so that I don't talk about that. It's absurdity. But yeah, it's this whataboutism where it's like we really just want to imply that we deny the Holocaust happened, at least in the way that we're told it happened. Nobody's allowed to question Israel. No one's allowed to question the Holocaust. I'm questioning this stuff all the time. It's part of my job. The history that I look at shows me, yes, these things happened in the way that we generally understand them to have happened. And what is so wrong with that? And of course we can talk about different perspectives and different backgrounds on it. I don't know the exact guy that you're thinking of, Scarface, but it's probably one of Stalin's commanders. And Stalin killed plenty of people and was targeting Jews near the end of his regime. Targeting Jews is something that every dictatorial and oppressive regime does at some point or another if there is a significant Jewish population in their line. The Romanovs did it. The Germans obviously did it. The medieval Europeans did it during the Crusades. And yes, Stalin was doing it too. And yes, the Holodomor is the starving of the Ukrainian peasants under Stalin. 6 million people, 5 to 6 million people died during this time, many of them through forced starvation and lack of crop yields because the Russians messed up their entire agricultural economy. Let me see. The creations with some androgynous aspect, hermaphroditic creation, obscure but passed down through the cults. Yes, that's true. There is gender bending in a lot of mystic and ancient cults and religions. Judaism was invented by the Rothschilds. Yes, that's incredible. The internet just allows people to come up with the stupidest ideas in the world and just throw them on and make them sound just as authoritative as I do when I talk about history that I have studied for all of my life. No, Judaism was not invented by the Rothschilds. Go home and read a book. And if you're home, pick up a book or watch some of my videos. I've talked about the ancient history of Judaism. Watch my video on Hanukkah, for instance. An absolute monarchy ensures that major rebellions happen every so often. That's true. Every government has weaknesses and soft spots. Have you watched the documentary Israelism? I thought it was very educational. Do you think you would be interested in it? I haven't watched it. I'd be happy to watch anything or listen to anyone or share anyone's perspectives. Just because I don't like the things that Candace Owens says doesn't mean I don't listen to what she says. Same thing. And this is a right-wing... I don't know what she is. She's just broken the spectrum and just went to the right and then shot up into the night like a rocket. I don't get her at all. But that doesn't mean I don't listen to Hassan Piker or Destiny or Modi Hassan or some of the Mehdi Hassan or some of the other are people who do very equivalent stuff on the left. Although I don't think anyone's quite as off the rails on the left. The question was, which country, while it was world superpower, did the best? You could choose a multiple of countries. Oh, you guys are arguing in the chat again. You should consider doing a call-in show, perhaps. That would be fun. I want to do a podcast at some point. Every donation that goes into this channel, I'm not going to beg for money. I use to help the channel grow. I use to buy better technology, better lighting, better equipment, and find ways to make the channel better. And a podcast format that's pre-recorded with a script is probably something I'm going to be doing before the end of the year. I also need to go live on TikTok. Actually, salvaged steel from before 1945 is highly valuable because it remains pure from radioactive particles that only became present after that. That's fascinating. That makes a lot of sense, Greg. Thank you for sharing that. 900-year Colt 45 is worth a fortune. Yes, those Army Colts are quite fascinating. And I know I'm way behind in the chat. I'm trying to catch up and answer. Who was Anne Boleyn? Anne Boleyn was Henry II's second wife, who he left Catherine of Aragon for, and in order to get divorced, declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England, which a lot of his prelates used as an excuse to reform the church and make it Protestant. Anne herself was a very devoted Protestant. Eventually, Henry kicked her to the curb because she wouldn't give him a boy. He believed that he had been cursed because he had had an affair with her sister, and because of that, God was punishing him. So he basically almost created charges of her being unfaithful, even having an affair with her own brother, and this eventually led to her being executed. Do you know who Urban Rommel was? The Desert Fox, one of the greatest generals in the 20th century, decimated the British before the Americans could get there. What did Joan of Arc do? Basically said she had visions and led the French in their revolution against English occupation. Eventually encouraged Charles VII to take over and become one of the greatest French kings ever. Was eventually captured by the English, and she was burned at the stake. And Amir, for the channel, thank you so much, Amir. I really appreciate you, and anyone else who donates memberships or super chats. You guys help the channel go. And just watching videos, we're monetized, so watching videos, watching long form, short form videos, liking them, commenting on them, getting us in the algorithm, anything helps to get us where we need to be, so that we can have better quality videos for better quality people. And we really appreciate all of you that are here today. And make sure to like and subscribe before you head out. Are you excited about Halloween, and what will you dress up as? I've got a Gomez Adams costume that I did a few months ago that I'm going to do again. I don't know what else. Yeah, I probably will just reuse that costume. But yes, I am excited for Halloween. Very fun holiday. Nag Hammadi were actually discovered the Romans tried to purge the first Christians and all their writings from existence. I don't know if Nag Hammadi is believed by any Christians to be Christian writings. That's the difficulty you're having there. You might be a no true Scotsman fallacy, but it seems to be extremely contradictory from established Christian teachings that did survive from that era, I guess. As the Holocaust is regurgitated over and over as the worst atrocity in the world, correct me if I'm wrong, Native Americans were slaughtered way more in numbers than Jewish, yes. Proportionally, yes, based on smaller populations. I don't believe the Native Americans were genocided. There was wars they were fighting that they were killed often in horrible numbers, and the things that happened to the Native Americans are terrible. We all want to use the word genocide because we all want to throw that in as the worst bomb of all about how humans are killed and tortured and stuff like that. But there are things that are almost equally as bad that happen all the time, and war is one of the greatest examples. And you look back in human history, there aren't major genocides because there's major wars and major repression. It's a thing that people looked at when they looked at the systematic killing of an entire group of people based on their own existence as people. The Native Americans died off in large number due to diseases compared to the Jews in the Holocaust, who did not die off in large number from disease. The worst I would say, I believe the Holocaust is one of the worst atrocities, and I think what makes it so bad is that the Germans were able to kill so many people so quickly. But I think the worst atrocity, if you're going by genocides, Mao's is obviously by number the worst. You got 40 million people dying, a cultural revolution, Great Leap Forward, which is really the Great Leap Backwards. But proportional to the population of a country, the worst genocide by statistics in human history is probably the Khmer Rouge killing fields that killed off about between a sixth and a third of the Cambodian population. Far more significant in those ways. The Holocaust is right up there with those two, though, and the Holodomor is there. I don't like ranking horrifying things in history. I think it's morbid, but there you go. The concept of moral superiority versus slavery that you came up was incorrect. As an example, the idea of Rousseau's good savage came up when he started to be in touch with some South American tribe. Yes, noble savage was a very, very patronizing attitude by Europeans that really missed the diversity of behavior and thought amongst native groups. And I am not wrong. Generally, in an atheistic society, the state becomes God. Could happen. Hierarchies always exist. Yes, the Pareto principle. I definitely agree. I don't know how much of a fraud he was, but he was certainly a pretty successful fraud. How did Suriname in South America become so diverse? I'm not sure. I forget who. I think it was the Dutch who colonized it. Do you discuss Sharia law? I discuss religious things. I don't go into detail about my religious beliefs, but I discuss religious things in the context of history. Is the elders of Zion meeting? I don't know. Jesus flipped their tables and expelled them out their own temple. Case closed. Are you just here to just complain about Jews? Nick Fuentes isn't on today. I'm sorry, I'm not wearing a suit and tie. Oh wait, I'm on YouTube. There's a difference. Any chance the NFL and NBA are rigged? The NBA refs got caught cheating in the 1985 lottery draft with Ewing going to Knicks. There's definitely plenty of conspiracy theories, and some of them are quite interesting. Always good to question history and look at everything, no matter what calls out. When people try to silence others, they have something to hide. Yes, I'm not going to try to silence anyone who has a particular view. I'm a free speech absolutist. I believe everyone who comes to this channel and asks and works in good faith to learn about history and social studies has a right to do so, and everybody has the right to learn about these things, and that's why I do what I do. I don't make a huge amount of money from this. This isn't my life yet. I want it to be one day, but at the end of the day, I really love doing this because people learn stuff, and that's really awesome. Where did you get such information? Read, studied, and did everything I could to just jam as much of it into my brain as I could. Wasn't Stalin Jewish too? He might have been, probably not. Lenin, Trotsky, those were Jews. Why doesn't Ukraine just surrender to Russia? That would mean giving up a huge amount of their autonomy in these regions like Donetsk that they want to hold on. The Donbass has a lot of resources and is historically part of Ukraine. Why are people asking you political questions, not history questions? Because they don't listen to me. Why do people still use the current image of Jesus if given the description in the Bible and where he was born in the world? He looks nothing like the image shown today. The Shroud of Turin. Cesare Borgia was huge in the 15th century. He was one of the most powerful families in Italy, and one of the most corrupt. And they obviously, Cesare Borgia was painted, I forget by the name of the artist, but basically that painting of Jesus based on Caesarea Borgia has become the inspiration for Jesus as the beard and the yellow hair, and that became huge because it was a church painting, became huge in the Catholic Counter-Reformation as an artistic statement against the Protestants. So artists like Peter Paul Rubens and others depicted Jesus as blonde-haired and blue-eyed. However, ancient depictions of Jesus did have the beard and the hair, even if it was darker, and a lot of it is based on the Shroud of Turin, first-hand accounts, passed down oral traditions surrounding the appearance of Jesus. It's quite fascinating. We've got the recreations from the BBC about what Jesus would look like genetically. Of course, there's also the Shroud of Turin debate that keeps going on and on. It's basically people looking at their own society and their own people and what they look like and trying to say we look like Jesus. Yeah. Why did the Jews poison on the wells? This is a rumor that goes back to the Dark Ages. There's a really the Black Plague, and there's a word for a rumor like this, and it's called stupid. Basically, because Jews had ceremonial washing from their kosher laws, they actually did not encounter and because they were more isolated, they did not encounter the Black Death as predominantly as other European societies in the mid-14th century, so they died off in lesser number, and eventually this led to the rumor that the Jews had created this, because if you can kill the Messiah, you can create a giant plague, I guess. And this, I guess, has something to do with the fact that they control the weather and Hollywood and this channel, and I'm getting paid by AIPAC, and Ben Shapiro is my cousin. There you go. You got everything you wanted. Let's move on. Jews Jews did everything. Staying was Gregorian. I don't know what you mean. Stop pretending Stalin was Georgian. Yes, he was from Georgia. But they're wondering if he has Jewish blood in him. Any history of any of the Romanovs that survived? There were several different Romanov princes who went to different areas. Many of them settled in Europe. I think a couple of them in Paris. Many Russian dissidents did indeed escape. White Russians who fought against this communists during the Civil War between 1918 and 1922. Many of them fled to ports in the Black Sea and then went to Turkey, and from there went to the West. I'm not 100% sure. I think Michael Romanov, the brother of Nicholas, ends up surviving. He passes on the throne when his brother abdicates in 1917. Stop pretending to be unintelligent when you believe in God. Anybody believes his God is a complete mental patient. I have said I believe in a higher power. I sleep better with a higher power in mind. But the vast majority of people throughout human history who were extremely intelligent and influential in the development of science, technology, and everything else that's important in the world would be stupid, would be a mental patient by your definition. That includes people like Newton and Einstein to an extent. The truth of the matter, so yeah, me just saying I believe in a God doesn't mean I believe in this particular God or that particular God. I don't share my religious views. I just think it makes more sense to believe in a higher power than to not believe in a higher power. So, no, I'm going to say no to that idea. Candace Owens is off the charts crazy, maybe a Woodrow Wilson follower. I have no idea. I really don't care what Candace Owens thinks. Is an Anglican split coming soon? I see a lot of rumors regarding the new female Archbishop of Canterbury. There's a lot of conservatives in the church who don't like her. Put me on the pod? Sure. It's called Looking for the Truth. It has no right or left. Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you love history, Ariella. I love having you here. Thank you so much. Hope your cat is recovering from Jewish cancer. Oh, jeez. To avoid confusion over when winter begins, since the Winter War began, then lasted slightly over 3 months, should it be called the Cold War? LOL. That's funny, but no. Put money into the animator instead of a podcaster. Who was worse, Mao, the Chinese dictator, or Pol Pot? Pol Pot was so bad that communists overthrew him. No one, and although the fact that the Soviets hated Mao, no one overthrew Mao. He's not going to beg for money, folks. Israel already sends him checks for 7K. Yes, I get plenty of money, which is why I've mentioned several times how money helps this channel, because I'm clearly being paid by Israel. If I was being paid by Israel, I would look a lot better, and the optics of the channel would look a lot better. Clearly, APEC isn't giving me enough money. Who is Mike Ross? I hope that's a compliment, Eddie. Tell us why the Jews poisoned the wells in the Bolshevik era. They didn't. Let me see here. God is a lie to civilization, or is he alive for civilization? Tanya, thank you for the gift. We're 2/10 of the way there. I'll do an extra video if you guys do 10 gifts by the end of the day. What was the justification for mandating the Christian priests be celibate? There's a rumor that one of the major reasons was to collect money and property and possessions from them. So whatever worldly wealth they accumulated would be absorbed by the church. The religious spiritual definition is that the priest is married to the church because he is a representative of Christ, and the church is Christ's bride. So, and that's why nuns are married to Jesus. And thank you, Tanya, for another gift. I really appreciate what you're doing to help the channel today. Let me see. Hitting the emojis on our side helps out the algorithm and traffic. Sure. With Candace Owens, it depends on if she's on her time. Oh, jeez. Fidel, that was way too far. But probably a little true. Just kidding. Let me see. You know the desert fox Erwin Rommel, thank God he was one of the greatest generals in World War II in Africa and France. Whenever I watch World War II documentaries, no one mentioned him, which makes me sad. It's just incredible. Just an amazing general. And if he hadn't run into Patton, he probably would have been able to get some better ending for Germany. Let me see. Le contaminant sans enchier. Use English, but I love that you're using French. So while the Native Americans were scalping each other and the Jews are literal child mutilators, they're evil. What do you think circumcision is? Who do you think has been pushing in the United States? Where do these people come from? I mean, let me use the Trump line on all of you. Are we still talking about the Jews? I've been very friendly today. Shouldn't be based off everything that's going on in my life. But are we still talking about the Jews? What's with these Jewish questions? Oh, that's what's with these Jewish questions. I answered my own question with a question. Yes. So you're referring to circumcision. You obviously think it's child mutilation. I don't know what the defense is for that. I'm not going to just defend everything Jews do. It is very antiquarian, to be sure. It was industrialization of the slaughter that made the Holocaust so appalling. Yes, and the rapidity of it. Let me see. You might as well get on your hands and knees, empty your bank account out for them, go stand in front of a synagogue and worship him as your master then. Where are these people coming from? Can't we just talk about history and social studies? That's what I want to do. Let me see here. What do you think about the millions of bees killed during the avocado season in California? Much worse than the... Oh, for Pete's sake. Let me see. Didn't the Italians kill around 40% of Libya's population via starvation camps? They did. And chemical weapons. First time they were ever used. The Ethiopian invasion of 1935 is an able candidate for when World War III really starts. It's obviously genital mutilation. It's obviously a crime against humanity on little children who can't object or give consent. False equivalence doesn't count. What? I mean, I understand where you're coming from. It's the point where does religious tradition supersede that? If you compare it to female genital mutilation, which is done on girls when they are conscious and will remember it and are traumatized by it, it's not comparable. It's done on infants at a very young age. I'm not saying that makes it okay. I'm just simply saying that you're pushing a narrative that really doesn't apply. History can be manufactured, yes, and that's why I'm here to tell you what's manufactured and what's not as best as I can. Jesus was from the Middle East, possible brown, possibly sure. Ukraine is where the Nazi full society actually fled to the Black Sun Society embolism. Okay, I guess calm down and take a breath. Eat a Snickers. You're not you when you're hungry. What is the past for the siege in Palatine? I don't know what you mean. Simon, are you talking about Palestine or the Palatine Hill in Rome? I'm confused as to why people are so hung up on saying America stole land when the human basis has been conquering land and people. It's been going on for thousands of years. The United States gets a lot of criticism for something that every other civilization in the world did. But it's fair. Obviously, America has these high laurels and morals. They try to stand on such moral high ground all the time, and yet they have to wrestle with their own history and how horrible slavery and dispossession of the natives was. And of course, we live in a modern society with modern morals that were helped shape by the United States, obviously ending slavery through a giant war and all the other things the United States has done that's moral, and plenty of stuff that's immoral. So it's easy to look back and judge. But yeah, context history is about adding context to our judgments. Jesus was from Palestine, Middle East. They are not bloody. They are not blood, buddy. Huh? Are you a Jew? No. Isn't that what most Jews look like? Oh, for goodness sakes. Yes, he was not blonde. We know that. Sacra, not so private. Are you just are you Kanye West, or has Candace Owens entered the chat? I would be honored to have Candace Owens in the chat, and thank you, Tanya. Again, we're trying to get to 10 gifts by the end. If you get to me 10 gifts, then I will do an extra video this week. I do 2 long form videos a week. I'll do 3. I saw something that back in the days Jewish people used to pick the little pieces of coins and then collect that and add that to get more money. Have you ever heard about this? Yes, and I don't care. I'm not. You know what? I'm just going to ignore Jewish questions so I can catch up with the chat. Let me see. Who cares? Have you met God yet? He never followed any religions or man gods. You know him. Get to use. Isn't God like the head of all religions? That doesn't make any sense. Let me see. Typical neurotic Jew. What disgusting little creature you are. I can tell from your phenotype. You're absolutely filthy. Keep avoiding the real questions because you don't want the actual truth. There's this meme going around where there's a leopard yelling at a monkey and the monkey's just like this. That's me right now. I love this. I've been called so many things, and now I've triggered the gripers, so it's been a good day. Greg, I can't believe I just discovered this guy now. He's great. I love history. He's doing an excellent job delivering it in an objective and civil, comprehensive manner, not always easy to do. And there are times where I'm not as nice as I am today, Greg, but I so appreciate it. That's so kind of you. I really appreciate the donation. It's great to have you here. Always nice to have somebody who's so knowledgeable. Join us. And yes, Matt, you stubbed your toe because of the Jews, but you should really sub to this channel so that you don't stub your toe again. Francisco Franco was base and cool and not even fascist or political, just a military man. Franco was able to basically manipulate the situation in Europe after the war and then Spain during the 60s and 70s so he could stay in power for a long time. If Mussolini had not gotten in with Hitler, he probably would have ended up the same way. Which just shows you how much the United States was tolerant of fascism when it came to fighting the Soviets. Are you autistic? I take that as a compliment, but no. I don't see Francisco Franco as based. You obviously have to deal with the fact that he's a brutal dictator, but he is he's an interesting guy, and I find learning about him and the South American fascist dictators like Perón and Pinochet very interesting lot. We don't know as much about them as we should, probably because the bogeyman for the United States has been communism, so we know a lot about Stalin, we know a lot about Mao. But we need to learn more about people like Franco and Pinochet and Perón. But I don't know why the right wing is now so obsessed with basically whitewashing these guys who were pretty nasty from all objective standards. Is there any data in all of our current scientific knowledge and understanding that conflicts with or isn't completely compatible with the creator hypothesis? It's a hypothesis for that reason, and it might possibly be true, but I don't know that it's true, Greg. We just got an influx of people. If you're just joining us, this is the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. We're going to wrap up our live stream Q&A where you can ask me anything about history. We usually do this every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern, but thank you for joining us on this Sunday evening. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy history, and if you like the vibes. So thank you for joining us. And I may not get to your question, but I'm trying my best to get through the chat. So, Weber referred to the Higgs-Boson particles as the God particle. I've heard that before. I need that money. Sign me up. You're selfish. I'm not selfish. I need that money too, which is why I appreciate the donations, and Tanya gave another gift. So we are 43 seconds away. We got halfway there, but it's okay, guys. I really appreciate all the support. Let me see here. Jew dominated Russia and then moved to Euro from Palestine by domination. Yes, Beetle. Thank you for giving us a historical perspective that never happened. If I could time travel, I would push FDR out of his wheelchair. Sam, you might be a little too based for yourself. I'm not a huge FDR fan, but check out my videos on him. Who was that guy who was a fierce warrior? His name was Hannibal. Was he an African descent or was he that Spain? He was Phoenician. The Phoenicians settled in North Africa and created a society called, and the Phoenicians were originally Semitic, but they created a society called the Carthaginians, and he was their greatest general, and he basically tormented the Romans for over a decade. Fascinating guy. I should do a video on him. Which is worse, slavery, the Holocaust, or colonialism? They are all different sides of the same coin. People oppressing others because they are different and using power to kill and mutilate people. You seem to have an interesting channel, by the way. Thank you, Ezimo. And yes, release the Epstein files. You are an awesome man. Thank you. I appreciate you, Tumbleweed. You're so kind. No evidence that it even happened, though. Okay. It's 1930 all over again. Yes, the way this chat is, it's 1934, and I'm in Munich. Let me see. You have referenced serious recent problems in your life. Can you please give more information about this? I don't get into personal stuff. That's why I haven't been as active on the channel as I probably should be and usually are. This is the channel. This channel gives me a lot of meaning. It gives me a lot of purpose. It's really wonderful what I get to do. And when I don't get to do it, it's disappointing and I feel bad. And we were growing at a pretty phenomenal rate last month, and we've slowed down tremendously. Because things have gotten so crazy in my life, but I'm here with you now, and that's all that matters. So, Pig Vomit, maybe one day if I have enough members, we'll do a members-only live stream, and you guys can get to know the real me behind a little bit more about my personal life. But I do share about football and basketball and sports and stuff like that. But I appreciate your concern. But for now, I'm going to keep my personal life to my personal life. And once I got a loyal cadre of members, we will. Before we take over the government and make me king, you guys can get to know me a little bit more. Maybe that'll be a fun. So if that's an incentive to become a member, you get to know the real me a little bit more. We'll do member only lives. What about the MAGA somehow far right Nazi? Is that just left-wing propaganda? I think that it's easy just to call MAGA because it's so nationalistic a Nazi, organization, or a Nazi belief. There's definitely a strong sense of powerful executive power from the Trump administration, but I just don't know. I don't think that Donald Trump is a Nazi. I never have. And conversely, I don't think that Democrats are communists. And I'm an American, so I look at this stuff and just look at everybody's over-politicization and hyperbole and just think it's ridiculously stupid. And unfortunately, Maverick, yes, this has unfortunately become the circumcision screen because everybody cares about that for some reason. Ruling Russia did not appeal to many. Why? Fair. Let me see here. History stuff. Is there history stuff? Let me see. What is the point here? How old are you? Just wondering. You can guess how old I am. I've had as a vote in the channel. I don't share a lot about my personal life, as I just mentioned. But I'm young. At least I think I'm young. Maybe I'm not young. Young people call me Unk, so I don't understand. And yeah, Unk snaps. The other day I heard on mainstream media that Hamas will return all the hostages after Israel turns over all their arms to Hamas. Yes, such a stupid idea. Isn't the Tsar of Russia with his family before the revolution? Yes, this is Nicholas II Romanov and his wife, Alexandra of Hesse, of German origin. Their 4 daughters and their son, Alexei, with hemophilia, who was cured, supposedly, or at least treated by the Mad Monk Rasputin, right before the Russian Revolution of 1917. I'm not talking about the Barbary pirates. I was talking about the Barbary slave trade. Fascinating stuff. I really do like learning about that. It's one of the most extensive slave networks that enslaved a lot of Europeans by North African Muslims in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. Yes, Russian. We talk about Russian history here all the time. Out of all the different solar systems, galaxies, and universes that probably could go into the hundreds of thousands of years, do you believe that there's life on other planets and has verified? I believe it's very possible. The universe is just too large to discount it. It's more likely than not likely, in my opinion. Why is there so much anti-Semites here? I'm not an so here I go having to defend myself from anti-Semitism. I'm not an anti-Semite, but people on the internet just love to listen to Candace Owens and then come here, I guess. And no, I am not a woman. I have always been a man. I am not the reverse Brigitte Macron. Stop it, Candace. Get some help. Anti-intellectualism is rampant in all of human history, unfortunately, tumbleweed. Let me see. Ice Ice Baby. Oh, geez. Trump 2028. Where are we going with these things? What historical event or period are you most passionate about? Russian history, 19th and 20th century. It's what I have my master's in. It's what I'm going to get my PhD in, Amy. But thank you for asking. But I'm passionate about almost every history I study. I'm like a history chameleon. Um, Let me see here. Happy Sunday. Hey, Daniel. Good to see you again. The 22nd Amendment assures that no president can run a third term. Isn't that correct? Basically, it's interesting the event that even the most modern Nazi war vessels of superpowers like the USA are really just great war design. Ships haven't changed much. That's true. And most of the military technology from the Great War was used in the early years of the last World War, what I call World War III, because the 7 Years' War is World War One. American history is no different than many other countries the world have all conquered and had slaves. Yeah, the United States has just been extremely extensive at it, and so have the Europeans, and that's where the difference comes from, in my opinion. I don't know how many people keep it together when they live stream. The brain rot comments and trolling affecting the content. You're doing great. Yes, I don't know. It's just the history. I look for the history stuff and try to find that king. Um, James, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure. Do you believe Gavin Newsom has a good chance of becoming president? I think the Republicans underestimate him because he's got so many skeletons in the closet that'll really hurt his chances. But I think he's pretty potent. He's good looking. He's charismatic. He definitely is kind of doing this anti. So the base thing has become popular in mainstream culture as basically if you have right wing perspectives, you are based. But Gavin Newsom has kind of done the reverse engineer of that for the left, where the left is the base ones, and I think that's helping him a lot. I think he's revitalized his image. He definitely has a much better chance of it than he did 3 years ago when he was in the dumps. But yeah, they were Holstein. They kept Russians in slavery for 300 years, serfdom. But that's partially true. The Romanovs started off as Russian. There's German influence later from Catherine the Great onward, but the Russians were into serfdom, and were already practicing serfdom in many ways before the Romanovs showed up. Can you cite any positive aspects of the Soviet Union? Manufacturing. They were really good at manufacturing. Erwin Rommel can fit the whole quote, said men are either dumb or smart or lazy or ambition, and the worst people are dumb and ambitious people get, yep. Thank you. Dumb ambition in the channel. Let me see here. Colonialism, 1600 1700 as far as slavery, by pirates, slavery, 1600 to 1900. Yep. History and social studies, but we're about to end John Johnson. I'm sorry. FDR would beat you up from his wheelchair. I don't know. He would have probably beat me in a swimming race, though. The guy was an incredible swimmer. The best part of the Soviet Union is they built monument to workers by killing a bunch of them. FDR would probably beat you to death with his own hands. Why are we now on this one now? Everyone was originally black and for Afro-Africa. The change skin color and features after moving different climates. What about we need a documentary? You don't know what true. That's a little bit of an oversimplification, but human society probably did originate in Africa, or at least somewhere near Africa. I'd vote History help Hefner as king. Thank you. People call me History Hefner on the chat and all the time. MAGA was first used by Clinton Gore campaign. It's been used before. Nixon and Reagan used it. Just to get deeper info about friendly history, I appreciate that. Let me see. Where in history would you go if time travel was real? Late 19th century Europe. Just an amazing time. We need to have electric lights. I want to watch the can-can dances at the Moulin Rouge. If you could talk with any historical figure, would it be would be the Red Baron. The Red Baron's a good one. Baron von, I forget it. Richtfron? Richterfron? I would pick Napoleon. Just an easy one. Serfdom and Russian slavery like that of blacks in the USA. Under the Tsars, Russia had no human rights. They were called Jews by the estates, like case in India. Yes, very true, Truman. As a fellow historian Greek, I appreciate your reasonable, thoughtful approach to these Q&As. Keep up the good work and greetings from Berlin. Thank you, Six, for joining us from Berlin. We have people who join us from all over the world. The word anti-Semitism is not exclusive to Jewish people who follow Judaism. There are other groups in the world that are Semitic. That word has been hijacked. True. If you're anti-Arab, you're technically anti-Semitic. There are Semitic people. Kind of. I wonder what he got up to afterwards. Because he's a Jew hater like the rest of us. This is our place. Oh, jeez. What is happening to my chat? Let me see here. Have I gotten... Was the Holy Grail a real thing? And if so, where is... I don't know. It could be. There was obviously a cup Jesus drank from. He drank from a cup. I don't know if it makes it holy. I don't know if it's caught his blood on the cross. That's all legendary, and we have no idea where it is. And I am way far behind. So I'm just going to wrap it up here, guys, because the chat's just all over the place. But thank you so much for joining us. Usually I am wearing my smoking jacket, but today it's just a little too hot. But thank you for making my evening very appreciative. This was just what I needed. A nice, a great showing. A lot of great people here. A lot of crazy stuff, but always great to have you here. And it's what I need because we've been lagging here on the channel because of everything going on in my life. But woke up and felt the need to do this, and it turned out to be really, really great. We went 10 minutes over because of it. How much money could I pay you to change your tier ranking of Woodrow Wilson to the lowest in F tier? How much money do you have? Thank you for sharing history, Hefner. I love your channel, and I love having you here. Beetle, whatever you want to think of me, I'll take it as a compliment. But Emir, always a pleasure. Greg, thank you for joining us. Sharil, great to see you. Tanya, thank you for all your gifts. Thank you for giving people memberships. It really helps out the channel a lot. Make sure to like and subscribe on your way out. We have long-form videos every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. The social medias are in the handle. I'm going to be using them more this week, I promise. We have short videos every day here on the Friendly Neighborhood History channel and live streams every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern, where I answer all of your questions about history and social studies, and Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern, where we do a live stream lecture based on a topic you voted for here on YouTube. Yes, thank you, Master. I really appreciate it. Does a kidney and $5 suffice? I don't know. What kind of kidney is it? Yes, we deserve our very own life. A very own life for mods and members will come very soon. I promise you guys. But I hope you all have a great week. I'll see you again Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Check out the videos in the meantime. Please like and subscribe on your way out. And if you want to become a member and get early access, it would be really wonderful. But you don't have to. I appreciate everyone's questions, and even the Groypers. I appreciate having you sharing your perspectives. I don't agree with a lot of them, but free speech is the hallmark of this channel. Well, history is the hallmark, but free speech is the basis by which we get that hallmark going. You should go for monthly subscriptions like $5. I have that here on YouTube and on Patreon, where you can get access to my First Lady series and early access to other videos. But take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your Sunday and weekend, and enjoy your week, and I'll see you back here. I don't know if we're going to be live streaming this Friday. We might be doing, but we will be live streaming at least 3 times with Columbus Day coming up, so looking forward to that. Take care, have a great week, and as always, like I always leave off, love history.